Still people coming in. Still got some cameras off, so I'm assuming you all are getting situated.
They just don't like to be on the big screen. They're here.
I just am in denial and don't even recognize the fact that I am on a big screen. Otherwise, I would be just mortified. I know Rachel and Jill have an agenda to share. And then I know we said at the end of this session, we'd want to spend a little bit of time to make sure you have a really thoughtful and full agenda for your full session that will be coming up.
Yeah, we have Russ Snap here, and I'm not sure of the, thanks, Allison. Because Russ gave a budget presentation to the board on Monday night, and I believe we all watched it. And so we're going to start with asking some questions about that. And then I think we did have some other things on our agenda that we'd like to get to. There's a hard stop tonight at 5. Yeah. So.
Lindsay and I did get a draft collective commitment on the work-life balance issue. So I think if we have time, and it kind of ties into some of the items in the budget presentation, we could maybe share that with the team and get feedback and see if we're able to finalize that today.
All right, I'm sorry, I forgot that you two.
Yeah.
Great work.
And Jill, did you want to share the agenda, or did you just send it around, or you just want to track us through it? I don't have a copy. And if you're sharing, or you want to just tell me what's on it as we get to it, that's okay too.
Okay. Do you want me to email you one real quick?
I mean, I can put it in the chat.
Sure.
Oh, perfect. Lindsay's going to put it in the chat.
Thank you.
Do we need the budget presentation to reference at all, like shared on the screen? I'm just curious.
Russ prepared a abbreviated presentation specifically for this meeting, and he sent me a PDF of it. So I put it in the folder, in our negotiations team share folder, and then I can put it, if everyone wants, if you want to make me the host, I can screen share.
Okay. Okay. Now see if you get the share option at the bottom, Rachel.
Share.
She wants to share it though on the screen.
She wants to put it up on the screen.
I'm working on it.
What's the last school day for y'all?
For students, May 27th. For certified staff, May 28th. Everybody else, I don't know.
Okay, good. All right, well, Rachel's looking to share. Lindsay, thank you. She dropped the agenda in the chat. Perfect.
I had to quit Ring Central to update my settings. Let me try it.
That's fun.
Getting back in.
Actually, I think anyone can share, but I made you co-host anyway, but I think the settings for me is anyone can share as long as I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, Rachel was just getting back into Ring Central because we had to update something for sharing, I think. Yeah. Was it Olathe that had their last day today? I saw your daughter's post. I think for kids.
Staff just have to, they work this afternoon.
Okay, I've readmitted Rachel, but she's not dropping in here. Does it say
There we
waiting
go.
on your, oh, there you are, Rachel. I see you. Okay.
Okay. Let's see if it works this time. Okay.
Perfect.
And then I will open the presentation. Okay. I did, and it's still showing.
That's because it's on
Click that little line.
Clayton's end.
This,
Oh, that's Clayton. Well, oh, all right, that is right. You're right.
I can't make, it's not showing on my screen.
Do it in a minute.
Okay.
It's not yours, it's his.
Okay.
It's not like he's
There we go.
anything else.
I'm ready whenever
Are
you
you
are.
ready, right? You ready, guys? All right,
Yeah.
so straw poll ahead of time said everybody watched it, so I'll try to go as quickly as possible and ask anything at the end or interrupt me if you want to interrupt me if it's relevant at that time. So the assumptions that we are building our next year's budget, we got good news from the legislation during the veto session. They're going to fund the base per the Gannon case for the next 2 years, and then we'll go consumer price index in 23-24. So our base will go up to 4706, generating about $4.8 million there. The new facilities waiting that we knew were going to drop off for about the last 5 years because they eliminated that from the statute. So that drops off in the funding portion. This was the last year for that. One of the most challenging years for Alice and I to project enrollment is this year. We are projecting about 1,000 kids coming back for next school year. Could be higher and it could be lower. Obviously, if it's lower, we'll have less revenue, and if it's higher, we will receive more. And the weightings aren't determined until September 20th of next year, so we won't know that. Our head count is locked in because it's based on the higher of the 2 prior years, so we do know that piece. Special education has the 12 FTE teachers that the IBB team agreed to last year. That would be part of the personnel increases, and then this is the reimbursement at the sped rate. Our LOB went up a little bit higher because now we're no longer on that fake base and we're on the real base. So we think we're going to pick up about $9.1 million more dollars over projected enrollment, and our projected enrollment is actually down about $5 million than what we budgeted because of the facility rentals and the weighted FTEs are down. So funding up about 9.155. On the expenditure side, as always, we budgeted $600,000 for professional growth, the column moon, so that's in the budget. $2 million for the health insurance, and that is not the new health insurance, that's the increase that was put into place January 2020, plus lots of vacancies. We had about 135 vacancies throughout the school year, and so we have to budget that in case those positions get filled. Student transportation contract is a 3% increase. Supplies and service, textbooks and utilities, $1.6 million increase. We did through our budget development process, from our initial budget request, we went back to our departments and said, hey, can you take a look at your individual lines and see where you can find some reductions in your budget and your individual budget lines that might be related to travel, or because you can't travel because of we're still under some pandemic restrictions for travel, and et cetera, anything that we can code to ESSER monies. We challenge all our departments to go back, look at ways they can reduce their budget for that second cut of our budget before we presented to the board. We were able to get about $1.5 million in reductions out of the budget to get to the numbers that we presented May 17th. So that was a good process, got some good results out of it. Personnel changes, 21.7 FTE, and then the custodial salaries, that's that first half of the movement of custodians to the capital outlay fund to help pay for that secondary caseload. And then this is the 12 SPED teachers that we talked about, that we agreed to last year. And so these are the personnel positions, 21 of them. So again, you heard my spill on May 17th, so I won't go through that again, but that's part of the HR staffing process, and then adding the teachers back to teach 5 out of 6 at the secondary level. The SPED teachers, assistant principal at Trail Ridge, we added about $1.8 million. And then in the ESSER plan that we presented in April, these positions,
It's okay.
go ahead.
I was just saying next page.
Oh, sorry. These are the 45 positions that were identified through the process of identifying the ESSER plan that was presented April 12th. And so this was the scenario that was presented at the board May 17th, where we had 5.9 million available as a surplus. And of course, the fund balance is at 12.68. Again, all these numbers are before what this team will, the exercise they'll go through for their compensation, and then later on what the board would approve for the other, or for the classified group, and the other groups would have to go through their negotiating process as well. So that takes me down to here. So to follow kind of the way we did it for that first meeting last year, when Stephanie kicked off the compensation part, she kind of asked the question, how much funds can be allocated for negotiations with professional employees? And so the answer would be $3,979,000. So this would be the number that this team would work with in when they're doing their exercise for compensation. This would be the maximum amount available, and it would still leave us the ability to have that 10% ending balance, and we would not be deficit spending. Okay? Then I wanted to present this. So I updated what I just presented to you with, if the maximum amount was all given out as compensation package, that total package would be $5.8 million, both for the certified and all the other 4 pay groups. Okay, so that's why I'm just reading that black box on the side. That would take the surplus down to about $70,000, and it would leave our balance right at 10.09%. So it's staying within our board policy for cash balances. Leaves us not a lot of wiggle room on the surplus, but it does leave a little bit. And it would give out the compensation package to all the different pay groups. Okay? And so then this last slide that you'll reference is the cost factors for just the certified group. And this would be based on 1% on base. So just like last year, I think Jay created a little spreadsheet for you guys, and so you just work off the 1% on base is $1,299,000, and you just would multiply your percent times that amount wherever you land. Step cost is $1,695,000. Health insurance for the certified group is $465,000. That would keep all the different plans whole. So we base it off the HMO, which is the highest premium amount. So we would need to increase the district contribution cap by $38 to $794, and that would keep the HMO whole. HSA would pick up a few dollars a month, but all plans would be covered. Okay? That was quick. So,
Russ, I need the data for this year.
the matrix.
The
Yes.
step and
Okay.
column.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, that's really the only thing I need.
So a 1% on the base would cost $1,299,000. A step increase is $1,695,000. And then on this health cap increase, just so I'll understand this facilitator, I'm sure everyone else in the room already knows the answer to this, but so if the district is going to pay an additional $38 on the healthcare increase, it's going to be a cost of $465,302. Would that prevent the
Linda has a question.
employees from paying an increase?
You showed that it was a 4.4%. That's the what I got from Dave Johnson was that the medical plan would be increasing with a 4.2% increase. Is that just because HMO is so much higher? Is that the
Yeah,
difference?
when David referenced the 4.2, that's kind of all the plans together. The total increase for all the plans would be 4.2. But when you look at just the HMO, to keep them whole, I have to increase it 4.4.
But that is something that this group
Can discuss.
can discuss.
Oh, yes.
Whether or not we
Okay.
want to do that.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, I just
absolutely.
wanted a clarification of the difference.
Absolutely.
Okay, that was my clarification, just as for facilitators' knowledge. When you talk about keeping whole, you mean that the district, this dollar amount is the district absorbing the entire increase, or there would still be an increase for employees in this formula?
This,
I guess I don't, make whole to me means the employee doesn't pay more, is that what you're saying?
the $38, the employee would not incur any additional costs with these increases.
Okay.
For the, yes.
Okay. And then the cost here on the 1% is 1,299,000. A step is 1,695,000.
Correct.
Correct.
What other questions you all have? Those are just my clarifying questions.
My question, I think I can wrap my head around it, but the amount that you have allocated for the professional employees, which is 3.9 million, that's less than what your surplus was in what your anticipated surplus will be in 21, 22, because, like, how did you get the 3.9? I understand you're going to have to be providing compensation increases for the different pay groups, like the certified, classified, but how did you end up going from the 5.9 million to the 3.9 million?
Yeah, so if you were just to subtract those two numbers,
Right, about 2 million?
which I got that math, so about 1,869,000 would take care of all the other four pay groups, so your psychs, PATs, classified, and administrators.
Okay. Question also, we, at the end of, well, last summer, on our Google Sheet that we were using to look at the different plans, we had written in there that we would be up for discussion on some kind of stipend, hazard pay type thing for employees, because at the time.
Stimulus package. That's what
Stimulus
we
package.
called it.
I know, we call it a stimulus package. Because back then, we knew that our 1920 surplus would be about 5 million, but at the time, I know that things were uncertain, correct? And so we didn't, look at that money as a way to provide stipends or compensation. Now we're projecting that at the end of this year, we're going to have 1.8 million in a surplus. So how can that factor in with our compensation discussions? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I wanted to clarify now, it is 1.8, but remember 920,000 of that is those 12 sped that we set aside in our budget for this year that we were not going to spend.
Okay,
So if you subtract the two, you get about $800,000, I had that somewhere, a little bit more than that, a little over $800,000 in surplus.
okay.
Because I earmarked,
For
we
the
earmarked those
21,
for
20,
those,
20, 21.
yeah.
Single-use monies.
Single-use
Yeah.
monies.
Yeah, and so right now, our plan is to use that to pay for our textbook cycle refresh. We're staring at a $3.5 million elementary ELA refresh for next year. We would use that to start funding that refresh.
Well, so, okay, so we can still discuss, though, that kind of, stimulus package?
So our understanding of the IBB process is that we present the maximum amount of funds that can be spent on compensation increases, and it's for this team to decide how that would be divided up.
I thought that we would decide how much the pot is and not like get presented how much the pot is.
Well, I can jump in and clarify here, and how you
Yeah.
all did it last year was pretty much Russ giving sort of the full presentation. And then if you remember, you all sort of understood that there are areas that the district's going to be spending money in that may be not available for you in negotiations, and that you all were able to ask questions about that, to sort of talk a little bit about that, so that people felt comfortable that what you really could spend is what you had. But I think that I opened that as a conversation for you all to have, saying that the district doesn't have an obligation to bargain over how they spend money in other areas. But you all last year were really good about being transparent, kind of doing the line by line versus the presentation, which I think this presentation's good. But you guys, if you remember last year, you did the line by line, so you had an understanding of where and why the district had already allocated money before you got to the point of, okay, now here is what can be used. So I don't know if that was helpful last time, and it seems as though you all settled on or didn't really have much disagreement about how much you can use for negotiations, but that's sort of how you did it a little differently last year. Again, acknowledging that, there's nothing that says the union bargains with the district or the board over how they spend money in other areas, but you all kind of went line by line on a lot of things last time, and I think it really assured the group as a whole, yes, this is all the money we do have, right? So I don't know if that would be helpful in terms of having some discussion about that. But just to clarify what you were asking, Jill and Rachel, yes, it is like, what is the pot of money, or what is the amount of money, if you will. And when you all started last year, remember there was a lot of transparency. It was so important because there was a lot of suspicion when you all started this process, your first IBB year, that there was sort of money out there that was unknown to the association or to the teachers. And doing that sort of line by line education piece, I think, is what got you all to a comfort level on the dollar amount you were working with last time. So I don't know if that's helpful.
I mean, to me, the elephant is in the room is if we agreed that to help the district out by setting aside some extra money for just in case, knowing that when we came back, we would talk about maybe using that money on the staff, and then it feels to me like there was no conversation on that, and it was just like, yeah, we used it for other stuff. We're just going to books now.
I'm just not following at all. I mean, I know we talked about if there was available money.
You can pull up the Google Slides if you want from
Yeah, I'm not following that at all. I mean, I think our thought process was to make the maximum amount that we could possibly make available for negotiations, and to be as transparent as possible about that, because if we are negotiating over the amount of money, then we're back at traditional negotiations, right? So the district sort of knows its limit, and we're giving you less than that, and you're asking for more than that, and we're going back and forth till we're in the middle, versus, a fully transparent process where we lay out the budget to the fullest and clearest extent possible, and then show that this is the maximum amount that otherwise, if we do it the other way, then I feel like we're back to traditional negotiations, and we're, okay, we can start here, no, we want you to start here, and then we're back and forth, which I think we want to avoid. I think we want to be partners in how we're going to budget.
I respectfully say this looks like you've budgeted everything, and then what's left over is what you have determined you're going to pay us. And that's not bargaining either. You can always go back and re-examine. You've set your priorities, and your message is what's left over is what we allocate to staff. And I think the budget is not finalized, was first reading, I believe, and it makes it really hard for our members to see this wasn't negotiated. A budget was created. We filled everything to meet the needs there, and then what's left over is what we're gonna throw out. And that, be mindful, that's not just certified staff, it's our classified staff, PATs, psychologists. We don't represent them, but they even, I don't know, maybe Stephanie can help us through this, but I don't see how
would
it's,
like to.
I don't
I
see
would
how it's
say
interest-based
that-
bargaining when we're just told this is the dollar amount that you have. We get to
Well, I
decide
mean,
how to
remember
do
when
it.
I did, Lynn, can you guys hear me okay? I'm struggling
Yeah.
with a little bit of a sore throat, a little bit of a cold here, but can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to say that, if when I started your IBB training, remember when we do the comparison between traditional and interest-based, we have that slide that says, these are the components of traditional bargaining. The first bullet point on that slide is get all you can, right? And that's not being derogatory, but generally it's coming with get all you can, right? Get the most amount that you can, regardless of what your interest is, right? So I would say if we wanted to look at compensation statement number 1 and compensation statement number 4, I don't think those problem statements were how do we get the most money to teachers. I think those problem statements look different. So if it would help to sort of frame how you all are going to approach compensation and see if you can sort of just push through what you think this dollar amount, whether you think it's enough or not, push through. And at the end of what you come up with, you'll say, okay, that doesn't meet our issue statement. It doesn't solve our problem, right? So if we could just take one pause and just to reframe it back on, your thing is to problem solve, not to get all you can. And you don't know yet whether or not you can solve your problem with the dollar amount that's put out there yet. Unless everyone just did the math quickly, or you just want to get all you can, I don't know. But so can someone share issue statement 1 and 4 and see how you all worded your interest or your problem that you were solving under compensation? And I don't know who's sharing right now. Is that Russ? I
I'm
don't know,
sharing,
Lindsay, if
I'm
you got-
sharing, so I can't pull it up.
Lindsay usually can pull stuff out of your drives pretty quickly. Do you want to pull, Lindsay, are you able
Yeah,
to pull
I'm
that
pulling
issue
it up.
statement 1 and 4 that you all started with, but haven't really looked at since you started this contract cycle,
So the
or
district,
this IBB cycle?
the district's issue statement for, KS blah, blah, blah statute, provides for negotiation of compensation, meaning salary and wages, supplemental contract salaries, and pay for overtime. The parties may negotiate any component of the professional employee compensation, step movement on the salary schedule, column movement on the salary schedule, base salary amounts on the salary schedule, stipends, and supplemental pay schedule. So
Okay, that sounds like your notification letter, maybe?
that's what it said in the box.
Your issue statement usually, it's worded as a question. How do we?
That's what it said in the box. So, and then NEA compensation, how do we ensure that our certified staff are adequately compensated for their contract and supplemental work?
Okay, so it's how do we ensure certified staff are adequately compensated for? Will you finish the sentence again?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm pulling it back up. For their
That's okay.
contract and supplemental work.
Okay. I would like to, if you don't mind, and we could do it later, we can do it now. But I would like to have you guys pull your interest out of that statement. The why doesn't matter, right? So that when you guys land on where you're going to land compensation wise, you see whether or not you met your interest, not whether or not you spent a certain dollar amount. Does that make sense? Because if you're not meeting your interest to problem solve, then you are going to have to revisit the dollar amount if you're not able to meet your interest. But I would like to have you guys spend a minute, and we don't normally go through the 5 steps on economics, but I think for the simple fact that you guys are going to have to test your economic package against something, it'd be a good idea to get interest out there. Those are my thoughts in terms of just going forward tonight. Any other comments, questions, thoughts? The district's issue statement didn't have a question to solve or a problem to solve on compensation?
I thought we had interest at the bottom, but I can't pull it up now.
Yeah, if you guys want to pull those up, you probably did capture some interest.
Yeah, you have interest on yours, Rachel. Or, well, sorry, on the district's SMSD, number 4.
And if Russ, I know, stand by on screen sharing if you can, Russ, but if each one of you can share one at a time, the interest statement around, the issue statement form itself around compensation. for the
So-
district and for the association.
I've got ours pulled up if you want me to read our interest.
You got it pulled up? I think anyone can share whether you're a host or not, but Russ is going to have to stop.
Well, I think it's Rachel that's sharing right now.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Just at the top.
There
The
we
little
go.
green area, I think, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. Now, Rachel, you're going to share the district's issue statement around compensation.
I think Dr. Schumacher had it.
I don't know how to do it. That'd be great. I can start to read it if that's okay. So our first interest on compensation, is that it?
There
it
we
is.
go.
Remain competitive in a challenging recruiting environment. Honor the great work of our professional employees, what they do for our students and our community. Use district resources in a financially responsible manner and be good stewards of taxpayer money. Maintain responsible fund balances and comply with policy DBB.
I'm sorry, what was the last one you said? You cut out at the very end.
Yeah. Maintain responsible fund balances and comply with policy DBB.
Okay, DBB, is everyone familiar with what that is?
Yes.
If not, we may have to, okay. All right, now, thank you very much for that. So I've made notes, I think, and if you want to stop your screen share, and then Lindsay or Jill or someone, or anyone that's got it, can you screen share the actual form from the association, from the teachers?
This is ours right here.
Okay.
I don't think, we didn't put anything on interests.
You didn't really put interest.
I think we thought
You
it
had
would be
some,
part
you had
of
some
the
priority,
process.
right? So you had bullet pointed if there is available funds, you had areas you'd like to look at, right? And we didn't really go through interest there, right? But you guys just pretty much said increase compensation, right? That's where I'd say, what is the association's interest around increasing compensation? It sounds like a no-brainer because just everyone should make more money every year. The cost of living goes up, right?
Yeah,
But I would also add, yeah,
I was gonna say,
I would also,
I like some of theirs, the
ahead, Jill.
honoring the work.
Yeah.
Honoring the work that the teachers did, especially this year, going above and beyond, working nights and weekends to get our Canvas, pages ready and to have things ready for hybrid versus remote versus in-person, all of that kind of thing. I also like their one that talks about being stewards of money and taxpayer funds, because the legislature, when they increase our funding and they want it to go towards hiring new teachers or increasing our salary, that would be being good stewards of taxpayer money and doing what the legislature intended for those funds.
right? So let's just say that, and I mean, if I had a flip chart, you know me, I'd be doing it. I would say that then you have a common interest here, remain competitive, right? And I think Dr. Shoemaker said that was the first interest the district listed, and I, can't imagine that teachers want to work in schools where they can't, recruit enough staff, right? That's not going to help with the goals you guys have, the strategic plan. So remain competitive. That I would say you have a mutual interest in, right? And if you have to get down to the brass tacks and facts on what is competitive, it's going to take a little longer, but you can, right? And then you also had recruit. I think Dr. Shoemaker said be able to recruit, which is sort of hand in hand, right? And then honor the work of teachers. I think that's, nobody could disagree. You guys have that interest, right? And then be responsible with taxpayer funds and maintain, I think you said, I'm reading my handwriting, a responsible balance in the budget. So, and Jill's raising some issues that you guys could unpack now if it leads you down understanding versus proving points, right? And I don't know, you may need to go down that path. Like, what exactly is money that is earmarked or designated supposed to be doing? Are you guys doing that and the obligations of the district? and complying with policy. So, I think your commonality is remain competitive, honor teachers' work, be able to recruit. So I would like to say that if we did go ahead and go forward with compensation today or our next session, whenever you guys want to do it, and you break into your 3 teams and you take that dollar amount and you say, okay, where would we allot these funds in order to meet our interest? Then when you come back with something, and if your team says, here's what we did in order to meet the interest, most the interest, and not harm an interest, right? Not supposed to harm one, even if you can't meet it. And if all 3 teams, or if you guys are coming to consensus or being really honest with each other that the amount that we're working with is a huge holdup for us, then we got to revisit, right? But I want you to not have the mindset of right now coming into this, unless you guys have been doing this so long and you're major mathematicians and you knew what all you wanted to do and you're comparing it to what you did last year. I don't know. But it seems as though right off the bat, you all, before even looking at your interest, half of this group, automatically said, this isn't enough. That is traditional bargaining, right? Because it's not get all you can, right? And by the way, it may not be enough. I just don't think you all know it until you're in your working groups and you dissect the interest compared to what kind of package you're trying to pull together.
Stephanie, if I can interject, because I'm the one that made that. I just question when everything has been budgeted out of more than a 2.5.
Linda, I want to say, I'm also not talking about any one person here.
Okay, but I am saying that the way the budgeting is done, it does appear that this is what we've agreed to as a district that is most valuable, where we're going to put our resources, and this is the bottom line, what we're coming up with. And if that's traditional bargaining, I think the district gets to come and say, this is what we're working with, and I don't see how that's interest-based. I don't see how you don't have some consideration of the budget, and I know that's the purview of the board, but.
I mean, I would like to say that you guys don't sort of shoot yourself in the foot as a team before you even get to the work, right? The work is, can we meet these interests? Can we meet the interest and not harm other interests, right? And I think you all have built enough trust through your 2 IBB cycles and through the heavy, hard stuff you have taken on that you get into your rooms as budget teams. I mean, y'all aren't going to sort of sit across from each other and sort of BS each other and say, oh yeah, it's meeting the interest if it's not, right? Or that it's not if it is, right? I mean, put a little bit of faith in you all as individuals and as a team, and the respect that you have for each other and the work that you've got under your belt to see how it plays out, Linda. And I don't want to be like, giving any direction. I don't want to be dropping ideas, but the truth is you're committed to problem solve in IBB. And this issue statement is a problem to solve. And when you get into it, if you're not able to solve this problem, what do? You keep working. And that keep working may make you look at different angles or step back a little bit or involve, a reassessment of how much money you're using. But, I would just say, and I don't think anyone is here, is don't go in with the goal of not making it work. Go in with the goal of problem solving. And then see, do you not have enough pieces of the puzzle, right? Or are the pieces not fitting? And then I think you guys just take it step at a time. And you'll keep working through it until you get to where you need to be.
It's hard
right?
to not feel disrespected when we ended with, if there was going to be extra or surplus, that we would talk about giving it back or finding a way to get it back to the teachers, and then having that not even be a discussion.
We are not closing that discussion off in any way whatsoever. If there is a way that we haven't followed the direction of how IBB is supposed to work, then I definitely would like to know or have our facilitator lead us in a different direction. Because we did what was our understanding of trying to make the maximum amount available to negotiate with. Russ previewed the work that was done. My department personally was come after for funds. Dr. Schumacher's personally was gone after for funds. The board is aware and watches and is acutely aware of the interests of NEA-Shawnee mission and of our professional employees, and has followed along and knows what the interests are and what the asks will be, and absolutely had that in mind. I don't know that this is, I don't see how this is different than any other year. The budget process always happens according to a statutorily required timeline. We have to budget for our expenses that we have to pay for. Negotiations always, again, just by timeline, happens after that. It's not, I mean, that's the same timeline that's happened every single year. The difference in traditional negotiations is frankly that it's a little more hide the ball, and both sides have this idea in the back of our mind of what we're looking for, and a board will always have in the back of its mind what the maximum that it can spend. The difference in this process is that the board's required to lay out all its cards. And that's exactly what it's done, which is uncomfortable for our side too. Because we're, trusting that we're not gonna overspend and that, everybody's aware of what work has gone into get the available funds where they are. And so that's what we did because we understood that was IBB, was show all of your cards and be fully transparent. The budget process is done very, very carefully to try and make sure that we have maximum funds available for compensation increases, recognizing everything that Jill said about what a challenging year this was and the need to reward all of our staff for that to the maximum extent possible.
Can I ask a question about the what do you call it, reserve funds? Well, I guess you'd call it contingency. Was it at one point the board's policy to have 8.3% instead of the 10? Like, I thought that was the number at one point. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the board policy says they recommend targeting 10 to 15%.
But did that change recently? Or was, because I
No,
feel
that
like
was
a couple years ago it wasn't.
That was adopted in December 2020.
Okay, so
that
it did
board
change
policy.
recently, last
So
December.
that's new then, yeah, okay.
So it's new. Because like last summer, I remember us talking about having 8.3%.
Yeah, that would be the minimum that we would
Right.
go into a new budget year with.
Okay.
Right, and you all may want to, like, you all should be just as familiar, you all, meaning everyone on this team, with board policy, and Russ, no one will ever, or whoever just answered that question, I think it was Russ, will never know the sort of, to the extent that Russ knows things, but it is important that you guys know exactly sort of how is that policy worded? What is this committee as a crew, as a team, when you're doing problem solving around compensation, how set in stone is that policy, right? I mean, don't jump to it yet, because you don't know whether or not you can solve the problem. Without doing something different, right? So I'm just saying you all are going to have to just take it on and know all your avenues to solve your problem, your compensation problem. And I say a problem because it's IBB, not that you guys are doing anything wrong, right, or broken. And I want to back up. I also want to say to Linda, because I feel like I didn't want to target anyone when I said half the team or how you're reacting. I guess I was just sort of getting a feel for how folks were feeling, and that's probably not right of me. So I didn't want to be accusatory, Linda, or call anyone out in any way. I apologize. I was sort of just comparing and contrasting, how easy it is to sort of everyone, step back to traditional. And I'm going to just work really hard to keep you on a IBB or collaborative problem-solving mode. And I think that I heard Rachel say, that they're not closing off, discussion around the issues that you're raising whatsoever. But I would also ask that, don't then say, okay, and let's throw more money in it before you even know whether or not that money works. Okay, and if it doesn't, then I think you have 3 teams that are gonna work real hard to explain why it does or doesn't. And then when you do break into your teams, we do need to, and I don't know, we don't have time tonight, but when you do your 3 teams, if you guys know what I'm talking about, and if you're new to the IBB process this year, Scott, and I know Linda observed a lot last year, Abby, you're new this year, Joe, I think what we do is I put you into 3 small teams, sub-teams of this team, and you all take the same sort of dollar amount. You share a spreadsheet that's a template, and you as a team, as your teams, you figure out, how much are you going to allot for, the step increases? How much are you going to allot for percentage? How much you're going to allot in other areas? Last year, I think you all had a consensus at the end where you allotted for additional FTEs, perhaps. You did some other extra things, right? So you'll do it in 3 separate teams without being tied to your idea. Then you bring it back and we have 3 different versions of what an economic package might look like, right? And if those teams are really meeting in good faith, talking separately, really twisting the numbers, looking at the interest, constantly looking at the interest, there may be a team that comes back and feels like they just couldn't meet the interest with that amount of money. There may be teams that come back and do it amazingly with some kind of a very creative thing, right? We just don't know till we get there. But I also want to flag that before we break into teams for the larger session or the longer session, you also do need to go back and identify, and I always say Lindsay and Rachel, because they're always in your Google Drive. It seems like they're sort of the record keepers. Did you have anything that we processed as non-economic that ended up having an economic component? If so, you guys need to flag that so that the small groups can consider funding it. And then there are 3 things here we can either talk about now or talk about when we go into economics further. There are 3 things that are listed on the association's compensation statement. That's BLT compensation, and I'm just shortcutting using my own phrases, instrumental coaches, and then there's a 3rd one for teachers that are teaching 6, right? So those will be also things that you guys, we're gonna wanna have interest identified. And when you go into your 3 teams, you're going to carry those three things and the list of interest, and your team will decide if you want to put money towards those, and if so, how much. Right. So I just don't want to lose track that it's not just salary. You know, the association brought forward some specific enhancements that may be possible, but we'll want to hear interest, right? Is that maybe making it a little clearer in terms of how you guys sort of stay on this path?
Yeah, I think I understand where you're going, saying like, start with a certain amount, possibly the amount that the district put out on their budget presentation, and then if it doesn't satisfy our issue statement and doesn't meet all of our interests, then discuss that amount again.
Well, I think our collective commitment goes directly to that, because the goal was to not beat none of us in this room control the amount of available funds for compensation, right? I mean, we just don't. And so we didn't want our team to have a damage to the relationships or beat each other up if there are boundaries that, you know, at a time are just not movable. And so what we talked about was, or what our collective commitment states is that, and certainly you would have time before this is on the agenda, is deciding whether we think it's possible to reach a TA on compensation with the information that's presented in the budget presentation, and if not, that's okay. But we wouldn't just like push through and try and like make a, you know, square peg fit in a round hole or whatever the thing is, that we would break for the summer and come back.
And then I also want to say that, you know, you as a group, I've said many times that when you all get to a situation that is a problem for this team, it's a problem for the team. We've talked about it in terms of when the teachers have that point where sometimes, remember our criteria, is it feasible, affordable, manageable, and is it acceptable, meaning acceptable to the board and to your members? If teachers get to a point where they're saying, hey, this is not ratifiable or this is not acceptable, if that is real, not just, you know, used in traditional bargaining as a pressure point, but if that is real, that is everyone's problem on this team, right? You all have to talk about what do you do to overcome that hurdle. If the money is not enough, but you don't know yet, give it a good faith effort, then you can't solve this problem without this amount of money. You have to decide that as a team, and then that problem becomes the team's problem, not just the districts or you know, or one person or Rachel or Russ. It becomes you all's problem together as a team. Then how do you solve it? Don't cross that bridge till you get to it, because maybe you won't have to get to it, right? Does it mean going back and asking for a relook at the availables, right? Or what y'all might think you need? I don't know yet. I'd say give it a good faith effort, and then if the interest cannot be met, remember you're supposed to meet most of your interests. Sometimes we don't nail them all, and you're just not supposed to harm an interest. Even if you can't meet it, you can't harm it, right? So yes, it sounds as though, yes, Jill, yes, and Rachel, yes, and everyone else. I think, you know, go with it. Know that there is some flexibility. You're hearing each other. And I think whoever said they feel, was that Jay? Or who is that said, I'm feeling?
Yep.
Right, because there's some feelings, right? So it's okay to bring those forward. Okay. Did anybody else have questions for Russ? Well, you've got Russ in the room, though, Jill. I didn't want to cut you off. Well, you've got Russ and his sort of budget head. Do you guys have specific questions for him? And or will Russ be available? It was such a benefit to have Russ. He was on one team out of the three. But Russ was beneficial to each team if they had calculation issues. Remember when you were doing your calculations, or how you apply the percentages, things that might get complicated accounting wise. Russ was a really good resource. And I don't know if you guys want to consider asking if, whatever day you all do your work, if Russ can be a resource for you, even on standby. I don't know what makes sense there.
Well, that'll be, if it depends when we schedule it, but theoretically it's during the normal business day, so he should be in his office right over there. But I mean, I think we've established a norm on this in the IBB team setting, that even if something is not, a negotiable topic like the budget, that it is something that, if of concern to either party, we would discuss it and make information available and be as transparent as possible. And so certainly we would keep with that. If there are concerns about budget allocations or questions about budget allocations, that's certainly something that, if you need information, just, let us know and we can work to provide it.
And I think that goes back to you guys sometimes lean on subject matter experts. I mean, Linda's sort of been the sort of side person that's on that, benefit committee, right? So just in the matter of having subject matter experts available, if you guys get creative or in the weeds around some of the issues around compensation, it would be good to think about who those people are. I just named Russ because he was on the committee last time, so you had that benefit of his being able to answer questions on the fly. Okay. Other questions right now? PowerPoint, and is this PowerPoint, even though it's shortened, can it be put in the drive or shared for everyone?
It's already in there. I think Rachel said she put it in there.
I did put it in there.
Okay. What makes sense in terms of moving on your agenda? And I guess at the end of this meeting, we'll decide how much or how deep you're going to go into economics for your full day session. So I guess we'll decide that together. And then, we always did that. Is there other information you need, other than the budget information and presentation? Is there other information you need? If you're going to be looking at interest in terms of, responsible, balanced budget, comply with policy, I wouldn't say study it and don't put your focus on that, but make sure that you know it or that it's available. So when you say, are we doing this? Are we meeting this interest? That what technically is that interest mean? Good to go, guys? Can we do consensus on moving forward on the agenda?
I'm looking for the title of something. I need 1 minute because I had something.
Okay, sure, that's okay. I have faith in you guys. You're gonna have to ride on my faith in you a little bit, but you guys will be fine.
I would, I am totally fine moving forward. I was going to point something out that I kept thinking about when because there was an added slide, right, Russ, that you added in or maybe a couple, like were those last two slides in there on May 17th, like the one that says salary cost factors certified?
No.
Okay. I don't know why I was assuming this, but I was assuming when I saw that part that those three things would add up to the amount that you put down for compensation discussion. Do you know what I'm saying?
They do not.
They do not.
They're less than that.
But anyway, I just wanted to, we don't have to talk anymore about that. I think moving forward is fine personally, but I just wanted to put that out there.
All right, and so, I don't want to rush you, and I still were holding on someone else that was looking at, I think Jay was looking at something.
Did you find it?
And then Lindsay did drop something in the chat. Was it Lindsay? So if folks want to cut and paste that or put that somewhere, I think she put maybe policy there in the chat.
John put the
Oh,
board
John
policy.
did, DBB.
Okay, thank you.
Good business practice recommendation.
That's just something that we usually have. Oh, I guess, all right. It's probably in there. If I need something else, I know how to get a hold of you.
Oh, I see. So John, you put in there is that the district policy? Okay, gotcha.
Rush shared with me the matrix, and I copied it into the budget section of this one.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Super, super helpful. Be thinking about if there's any other information that you all need. Okay. I'm going to kick it back to you, Jill, to bring us back into the agenda. Was it the next thing on there was maybe a review of work-life balance, but I don't have it pulled up, so you'll take a look.
Yeah, if you guys want, we did have time between the last two meetings. Lindsay had taken really good notes about our discussion about work-life balance, and then I had prepared like our lengthiest ever joint statement, so I kind of looked at that. And I thought about like what would be the audience for this collective commitment, which I think would obviously not just be our team, but would be professional employees, and what assurances we could give them about the work done in here and the discussions done in here. Some of the stuff I listed, I'm not sure if we actually, like, is feasible or we agreed to, but I just put it in there anyway, and I hope that they're all things we can do. But I was hopeful with this document, if I say to myself, I'm a counselor, I need to know what work has been done by that team to address my work-life balance, I could kind of go to that section, I could kind of see how, I mean, just the bulk of discussion and work that was done. So I think this is accurate, it reflects what we said we could do, but I just want to make sure, because some of it's commitments on others, like Dr. Gilhouse right from the outset, and Dr. Schumacher's subcommittee, or these all things in, Sherry Dummeline, who's not even here, but I think was very clear about her commitment to do things next year. So
like up here, the first section is all of the notes I had taken during, excuse me, our discussions, and then, from Rachel's notes. And then, this is where Rachel had kind of synthesized it into much better language than I had typed.
Well, I just tried to formalize it, and I looked at the format we did on our collective commitment for our procedure for IBB for this year and formatted it the same. And again, just for readability. And so I think the first thing we kind of talked about when we did this was, and I changed the term, by the way, Lindsay, because Dr. Gilhouse told me today that the term that we will be using is not going to be supervision time, because we talked about how that wasn't entirely encompassing or accurate. And so support time is, I believe,
Support period, yeah, support time.
support time or support period, which I agree is better. And so on there, the three things that we had is that we will have that do's and don'ts list that was previewed with the team, and that finalized document is going to be shared with Linda. Once it's finalized, it'll be shared with building leaders. And they will receive a consistent message in regard to appropriate use of support time to assist and support students. I think a lot of times we've seen issues pop up, and I know the goal of our leadership team is always to make sure that everybody has the same information and is doing the same thing. This is going to be really important, so that hopefully all buildings are doing the same thing. And so we'll make sure that that message is appropriately delivered. I assume that would be done at our, what do you call it, before the school year starts?
Well, it would be at the leadership retreat.
At our leadership retreat.
And that would actually go into Dr. Sherman's, to-do list, who'd be sharing that and reviewing that with principals and making sure that the same consistent message is shared with staff, so we get buy-in, and also shared with the BLT and so forth.
Was there an update on Stuco?
It didn't go very well with the principals. And so their question was, it's not to be graded, but their question was how much grading or prep time is really going into that Stuco period. So I believe there probably needs to be some discussion about what that would look like. Some believe that maybe there's just a final grade put in. The other option is if they didn't, we could do it before or after school. I don't believe that would be a popular decision, and we don't want to. We want to be able to keep that for the Stuco sponsors during that support period. But that was the only one that they had a real problem with because of the master schedule challenges that it presented. I'm just being candid with you.
No, I understand. I appreciate it.
So, I'll be honest with you, I'm not really sure, where we go from here on that. If you'd like, and it's up to you, I'm sorry. I don't know if you would like to have the principals talk with the Stuco sponsors. I don't know if they'd be comfortable with that. I don't know how we could maybe work through that. And
not having any experience in it, I don't know if there's necessarily mixed messages on norms or what is expected. And that kind of thing.
That's part of the problems. I believe that the stu co-sponsors and some of their roles may be different from building to building, not only with.
There's no curriculum tied to it, and so it's.
I thought that, oh, there isn't? I thought that.
No.
Oh.
There is no curriculum.
So what's the letter grade based on?
It's a great question. And so that was the part that even the
I mean, I think
principals.
that's a huge
That's-
district issue, so that it should be consistent, that,
I would agree, and in fact,
is it-
I don't know why there is a letter grade attached to it.
or why is it not just a
Pass,
fourth a
fail.
credit, or a pass-fail, or a,
I hate to say that it's always been that way, but it certainly has for the past 23 years that I'm aware of being in high schools. And I will tell you that, again, those numbers vary in that class. Some of them, when I was at South, we had 4 kids in that supervision class. And I hear from other buildings, they may have as many as 15 or 16. They may have the tier of leaders below the president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. So I
Well,
think it
I think-
varies.
I think, because I was a senior class sponsor for 20 years, so I wasn't the Stuco sponsor, but I know that when everyone was teaching 6, at least at East, the Stuco leadership class expanded to include class officers and representatives who were able to fit it into their schedule since everyone else was teaching 6 and that was a class in a letter grade, that it probably shouldn't be a class of just 4 people. So, but I think this is something that consistency between the Stuco should agree. Scott, if you're going to lead that, or Joe, that we determine how that grade, if it is a letter grade, what's it based on? Because if it is just, hey, we had a great year, everybody gets an A.
It's a great question. And
Yeah.
I just don't know that answer, Linda. And to be honest with you, I wanted to do some work behind the scenes, but I wasn't going to go start talking to people until we had this discussion in here. So I think if everyone is okay with their principal having the discussion with their Stuco rep, and that rep can, communicate back with you as well as the principals back with me, we may be able to close out that do's and don'ts, because I thought we were pretty consistent on the rest of them.
Yeah.
If you're okay with that.
Yeah.
I just think we need to do that, since the agreement specifically says that if a class involves a grade, that is considered a prep. So if it's just
You showed up and you participated.
yeah, you're not, I'm not going to make any kind of.
Yeah, but see, it's kind of tricky, because I don't want to take a grade away from a kid, but I also think they need to earn the grade, so that there should be a curriculum, which there isn't. And so it's a real gray area that, to my knowledge, hasn't really been ever brought up before. And so when we're trying to get more clarification on what that support period looks like, it is the one caveat that sticks out. So if we can move forward, I will talk to the principals, myself and Scott, to see if they can have a conversation with their Stuco sponsor, and we'll get feedback from both sides on that before we move forward.
Well, and I think we've already, we're going to have more conversations about it anyways.
I would agree, and I don't think anybody wants to move it to an after-school. I mean, I really don't. It's not the goal, but
Yeah.
I think that the principals did feel a little hamstrung with regards to the master schedule on that. So maybe, I'd like to think they can work it out and talk with each other and see, because I don't know where the Stuco sponsors are.
How was it done before?
It was a supervision period, back when we called it supervision period.
Oh.
That was basically when it was a, teachers taught 5 periods before everybody went 6. That one period was their supervision period for all of those years. And now the only thing we're doing different is calling it support period.
Dr. Schumacher, do you have the list of who those people would be? Or do we,
The
do
Stuco
you know?
sponsors?
Yeah, or do you know how we can get that list? Just so that, if you're reaching out on your end and we can reach out on our end and kind of just come together with
Should be pretty easy to
information.
get that list.
Yeah, Dr. Sherman, can you help?
We just
all we need to
need,
do
we
is
just
reach out
need
to the
northwest and south, because we have east, north,
Yeah,
and
I know
west
who
here.
Wes is.
Okay.
Scott can get that information real easy, and so we'll know who the 5 sponsors are. And again, we're talking about one from each one of the high schools. Horizons doesn't have it, so,
We have 2.
okay, didn't know that. But I will tell you, it was for always before, it was counted as their supervision period, and there was a grade given back then.
Okay, so we'll do some follow-up on that, although I don't know that changes language in our collective commitment, it's just that it's not done yet.
Can I ask one more question? At some point, Scott, I thought that Stuco Hour was, enrollment-wise, was a leadership class.
There's only 4 in there.
No, I just mean, what's the title of the class? I thought that it was a actual, they called it, because you can't call it,
Stuco.
if you're going to give something a grade, it has to be
Correct.
a course with a course number and.
We have to look in the program of studies to
yeah.
identify what that
I
title is.
think that
So
name change became something leadership class.
I believe it did. I can't tell you, but I believe it did.
Guys, I'm not sure who's taken, since Rachel's presenting, Lindsay, if you're catching notes on the follow-up, that secondary issues that are sort of coming up relate, just whatever that follow-up list is, Lindsay, are you getting that?
I'll have to put it in, because right now I'm screen sharing with you all. That's my screen.
Because I'm not making note of them, and I agree, Rachel, they may not be linked to what you guys do on work-life balance, but it opened the door to those issues, so I wanted to make sure someone caught them, so at least you can go full circle on those issues outside of
Or
here.
John, can you put them in our?
Or here if needed.
Just the meeting notes. It's just 2021, 520.
Leaders, prac.
It's leadership,
abbreviated.
it's the leadership practicum is
Yeah,
what
it's-
Scott found.
Yeah, leader practicum. I just looked at the master schedule for West.
Okay. Are we good to keep going through this?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the next one is collaboration time, right?
The next was break time for secondary. I think collaboration is down a little further.
Okay.
Yeah, it's down there. This was just the memorializing the discussion that we had, and I think Dr. Sherman helped with that to talk about how the recognition, and I think Jill did a really good job of setting out the issue with the block scheduling of how some people, it would be 2 days a week, right? That you would be teaching 4 classes, and the goal would be to minimize that as much as possible. And so, again, just to let our secondary teachers know that that's going to be work that's done to try and get that. And what happens if you do your master schedule, Dr. Sherman, you look and you see that there's some people that have that, like, are they consulted with? Like, how does that?
Start over again, I'm sorry.
So if you're working through your master schedule and you look and see that, like, the only way you can work it out, there's some teachers that are teaching those no days with no breaks other than lunch. Or, do you go to them? Do you talk to them? Do you notify them? Like,
Yeah, those conversations are had with the DCs of each department as well, as they have a big part in setting up the schedules.
Okay.
Department chairs.
okay.
I didn't have a conversation.
You didn't? Okay. So maybe another thing just to make, I say the audience for this is not just us, but our professional employees, I think certainly as well as our administrators. Because that's the other half of the equation. So we can make sure that this gets out and, that is a collaborative effort as much as possible. Because I get it. I mean, that would be a terrible day, really hard day.
Yeah, are you a DC or did your DC come talk to you guys?
I'm not a DC, but as NEA, I do sit on the BLT, but I'm not privy to master schedule stuff typically until it, comes out.
Speak to the other 4 schools process. So.
Yeah.
Our master schedule is supposed to be given to us tomorrow. We haven't got it yet.
I just got a copy of mine, so I know what mine is.
How frequently does it change before the start of the school year?
Every year.
Okay, I was just, okay.
Mine doesn't.
It's a draft. It's a draft. Every
Alright.
day.
I assume like with enrollment and just, okay.
A lot of moving parts.
My first hour will always be advanced welding, and 7th hour will always be intro to welding, just because there's kids that travel.
Okay. Your upperclassmen, meaning, would travel?
Well, somebody from East, they go over and take well.
Oh, really?
I do have a student from East
How cool.
and
They
North
they
and
can do that.
Northwest, yeah.
Because not every high school offers that class.
Only one.
Oh,
It's just me.
I love learning these things. Okay, so the next section was where we memorialized sort of our discussion with Sherry Dummeline. And I tried to get in there the stuff that Stephanie had suggested, like just some acknowledgments and some communications about, you know, things that have been done either through work by our team or through the team that determined ESSER funds. And so the first was just an acknowledgement of those 12 additional special education teachers. The second was Ms. Dummeline's, you know, commitment to get together a work team, because I think that we teased out a lot of paperwork issues and meeting issues and things that are really obviously unique to special education teachers. And I know just from talking to her separately that that's an issue that really matters to her. It matters to her because she cares about her staff, but it also matters to her because if you don't work those things out, you end up with sloppiness and problems and paperwork, and it's not getting done correctly. So I know she feels really strongly about that, and obviously even did some preview work this year to look at caseloads and what's a manageable caseload. And then the last reflects something we'll need to be sure to pick up next year is to look at that agreement when we're fully implemented 5 out of 7, because it really is probably unnecessary, or at least needs to be reviewed, because really it wouldn't be different for special education teachers. Okay, the fourth one, this is you, Dr. Schumacher, and I hope I'm okay because I know you offered that, but thank you. But getting together to try and figure out, because that work's not done, what can we do for some relief for next school year?
Yeah, actually, I have an update. So Lindsay and John and Dr. Morgan and I met with the subcommittee last night, and I think, had a pretty productive meeting, so anyone else chime in and help me out with this. Lindsay took some awesome notes for us, and I'm looking at those right now.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Is that Mike?
Yep, sorry, is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So we brought the team back together. We committed to continuing the work next year to try to find a more global solution to that guarded collaboration time for elementary and middle. But the task last night was to kind of brainstorm some solutions for next year. And so we did. We took it from an elementary and a middle school perspective, and we created basically a menu of what different schools are doing at each level to try to find that guarded collaboration time, even within the constraints of the current schedule and the current negotiated agreement. And I think, and I don't think we want to dive into them. We can if you guys have questions, but we probably have 3 or 4 solutions for each level. And the current thinking is between Dr. Sherman, Ms. Darby, and Mr. Lowe, the 3 directors. They would provide guidance to those principals to consistently find some collaboration time within that menu of choices. We think it's viable for each school to do something within that menu. It doesn't give the time that we think is appropriate, but it gives something. I think that's kind of a quick synopsis of where we landed. Guys, anything else that I missed? Or?
No. I think that's a good synopsis. I think, at some point, I don't know if we want to pause in the middle of this, we can, maybe on Tuesday, just show that menu just to kind of, and maybe somebody will have some great idea that we, didn't think of, or at least we can share kind of our thoughts of why we had kind of thrown out some ideas.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
So we're doing work.
I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah.
The next section just memorializes what Dr. Schumacher shared on clarification for determination of schedules for part-time teachers. That was the clearest way I could think to say it. It's 0.1 per class.
I think we got to go back to that.
Yep.
It's like just because I'm a part-time. So maybe I'm not interpreting this right, but I'm 0.5 and I teach 3 sections each semester. So based on that, I would be a 0.6.
Yes.
So am I moving to a 0.6 next year, or can I negotiate to get down to teaching?
We're going to have to figure it out.
Yeah.
I think we need to negotiate. I think we need to put language in
Okay,
Or will
Let me pull
this,
back. I think we need to discuss maybe putting language in to clarify that.
okay.
because will
For-
this start this .1 per class taught each, or for the year as next year, 21-22, or 22-23 when everyone is, when secondary is all 5 or 7?
Yes, 22, 23, when everyone is
We
on
definitely
equal
need to
playing
figure that
field.
out then.
You know, what's that?
We definitely do need to figure that out
100%,
then.
yes.
Because then next year's an odd year. Or like,
That's my view of it. I'm working off of the current language and that the district would make it a concerted effort to get, make some progress in this first year, and we have. And then by the 22-23 school year, we need to do, I think we need to perhaps memorialize what we're actually going to do moving forward.
So that's good that we added those years, because
thank you, yeah. Okay,
especially since master schedules are pretty much done.
see, this is what happens when
Someone would
you
have to
have me
teach
take
that
charge of writing things.
section.
But we both, like, you read over something over
Yeah.
and over again, and we're like, yep, this looks great.
Okay, the next is counselor workload, and we've reviewed the additional counselor being added at each high school. And this was just part of our discussion, I'm not sure I fully understand it, but that we're gonna need to continue discussing, like an acknowledgement that it's not over, that we're gonna need to keep discussing it. And then the last section I added as, whether it was,
Can I go back to counselor
Yeah,
workload real quick?
please.
Because I did speak with John McKinney about that, and I think one of the concerns that were shared is that I think at least you shared, that some counselors felt like it really wasn't lightening their workload, even though they were getting an additional counselor. I asked John about that, and I asked him if he'd be willing to come and speak to us, and he said he would absolutely, because he said the feedback he has gotten has been quite the contrary. Now, it doesn't mean that some people can't say that, but he said he would be more than willing to come as he oversees the counselors and talk about the role and how they intersect.
Am I correct in stating that the new counselor is, although they aren't getting like a section of the alphabet, they're removing other things off of the other
That is
counselors'
correct.
plates?
That is correct.
Yes.
The workload, it's not an alpha workload, but it is portions of things that some counselors are currently doing right now.
So,
That's my understanding.
since we broadcast this out after our last session, I was approached by a middle school counselor, and I know we can't, I'm just adding this to the thought process, that middle schools, when some of those schools went from, for example, I'm taking the east area or the north area, Mission Valley and Indian Hills combined, and when Hawker combined with Antioch, they went from 4 counselors to 2 counselors. At Indian Hills, the counselor I spoke to has 450 students on her caseload, and there at the middle school there is no support staff designated for the counselors. There's no registrar and there's no counseling secretary. And that in addition to their counseling duties, they have a 45-minute daily lunch duty, they do bus duty, and they do before and after school duty. And so they just wanted it out there that, we have budget allowed so that every school, elementary school, will have a full-time social worker. We, through ESSER funds, have looked at lightening the load at the high school counselors, and basically what the middle school counselor shared with me is they are drowning because their work really, since is so much hands-on with kids, they could work well beyond, but they can't. Their work has to be done with the kids. And that 450 caseload, I think, is probably larger than in some of our high schools, and certainly will be after next year. So I think I would be remiss if I didn't share those concerns that came from somebody watching our last presentation.
Thank you.
I wouldn't disagree. I think it's a fair point.
That's correct.
Yep.
The only thing I can't confirm or deny, and I'm sure it's true, is the lunch duty and whether that, and I think we could find some flexibility in that in working with the administration. But everything else, Indian Hills it's a load. It's a lot of kids. Biggest junior high.
Yeah.
Everything.
We can talk administratively as well. We've made a commitment to help out Trail Ridge, but of course, there's only 2 administrators that are doing the same type of work. So, yes.
Agreed.
There needs to be a look at that.
Good place for an intern.
That's been discussed as well.
We get counseling interns also.
Okay, so the last section was sort of an afterthought I had this morning, just to kind of, again, when Stephanie had mentioned acknowledging things, I thought it'd be helpful to sort of lay out those other things that don't kind of fit into our previous 6 categories, but I think will help as our professional employees, face what's going to be another challenging year of students that might be behind or have other issues. And I can tell you, the issue of this being paid with one-time federal monies weighs really heavy on the board. It weighs really heavy on our incoming superintendent. And, the board has an interest in very carefully studying how these, the impact of these things, the help of these things, so that, a determination can be made as to what we do when that money is gone. It's not something that we thought, again, with the goal of making the maximum amount available for compensation increases this year, that we should try to start setting aside. I don't think that time is right now to do that. The board didn't think the time is right now is to do that, because we do agree with the need to reward people for a really difficult year. Of course, that's, again, open to our discussion, but it might also be premature just not having had time to have a year to see where those, what was the best, the benefits, I guess, of these things to measure that. So I think it's, helpful to acknowledge that we need to do that study. We need to figure it out, and we need to, next year, as IBB gets together, have a discussion. Some of these things aren't, negotiable topics like class size, but we certainly recognize that that's important to our employees and does impact work-life balance. And so I think that's going to be something that our team, has to come back to, and certainly the board has to come back to, because it's going to be a challenge when you look at that total bottom number that Russ presented of 3-point-something million.
Hiring wise, with the math teachers, are the secondary, are they all already at 5 now? Or will the spot?
I can't say for sure. I think the majority of them are, but I can't say definitively. Do you know? At North?
Well, I mean, I know at North, yeah, we'd all be at 5. I do know, though, that I think it was at Hawker where most of the math teachers are going to be doing 5, but if they taught the math workshop course, they would be doing 6, because they're now considering, I think, math workshop as an elective. So that person would have 6 math workshop classes.
I mean, that, to me, it just pops in my head of there's, hire them now, but then we're thinking forward, if there's going to be a spot to hire another math teacher, we kind of.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, too, that there's that commitment next year to add additional FTE out of the custodian move.
Oh, okay.
So there's going to be even more hires next year. Yeah, so those 10 were in addition to what we were already planning for the 5 out of 7.
Do we think we're missing anything in here that would be helpful to encompass in a collective commitment about work-life balance issues? I like the changes we made as we went through it. Is it something, and I don't know if we can do this, that we would want to add to our joint statement or attach, or can we do that, David, who's not paying attention? Hi, David. Can we, it's just an idea that I had, we put a lot of work into that discussion, and I think it's important, it can be disseminated different ways, it's something that, you guys could share on your website, but I think we could also just send it out in our joint statement if we want to.
You could just PDF it and put it as a link into the joint statement.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay.
You're welcome.
Does it talk about the lowering of
Class
Class
sizes
size.
was on number 4.
There you go. Yeah,
Hire additional elementary teachers to reduce class size.
perfect.
Are you still with us, Stephanie? I don't know. I see her icon, which makes me think.
Are you guys?
Yes.
Someone asked.
So I think
Yeah, I'm
we're
here.
probably at a point where we have to vote on the collective commitment.
Well, so I had a question about this.
Okay.
What did you title it? Will you scroll back up, Rachel?
I'm not on the screen.
Where do you want it to be scrolled to?
Oh, no, I just wanted to see what was heading. So I guess I just want clarity before we do consensus so that everybody on the team has clarity. Was this intended to be like an MOU, just like a public statement, part of the master agreement? What exactly is the document? So everybody's kind of on the same page on what you.
It's our own beast that we invented.
Right, I see that.
So
I see that.
it goes back to our procedure that we agreed to just for this year for negotiations of trying to have a different term for things that aren't language changes going into the agreement. We called them collective commitments. So our procedure agreement was not an agreement to change the P&A. It was just, an understanding for this year. So, yeah, it's our own beast.
I just want to make sure everybody had an understanding of what it is. I think it's a great.
An acknowledgement of an agreement to work this way.
Yeah.
Just kind of a tidy way to wrap up, like, this is what we talked about, this is what we're gonna do about it, and then, we can come back and check in.
So it's hold you all accountable to sort of coming back and revisiting at times. It's
Is
kind of
there-
like
is there
works
a
that are
w-
in process.
Is there a way we can add some sort of general statement that we acknowledge the middle school counselor load, and we'll continue to look at ways to
Yeah.
address that?
Remedy, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Rachel, who all worked on this document?
Lindsay and I did. And she's, I think, typing on it right now.
Yep.
You guys did a good job. Thank you very much. You guys did a good job. You captured so much, very comprehensive. So yes, for consensus, if there are no more questions or suggestions.
Do you need help with that, Lindsay?
Yeah, well, plus, I was on the screen, I knew everybody could see me typing, and it made me really self-conscious.
Yeah, me too.
You all can see each other in the room. I don't know who, if you want to sort of, Jay, I hear your voice. You're going to have to look around because I can't see everybody on the screen. If it's thumbs up, if you love what you've done.
Well, we're
The
finished.
parties
Anyway.
acknowledge that middle school counselors have high demand, or I don't know,
A heightened,
Oh, you guys are still finalizing that adjustment.
Okay,
Okay,
here we
sorry.
go.
an
I'm two
increased
steps ahead. I'm trying to
load,
commit.
and we will look at ways to lessen,
Additional duties as assigned or something.
Trying to honor your 5 o'clock hard stop. I'm not trying to rush it, but I do want you guys to
Well,
take a look at
my
this.
event has been canceled
Rain.
or postponed.
To-
Yes, it's raining.
Like super hard.
Well, the potential rain that will be coming, I think, since it's an outside event.
Say it again, I'm sorry.
The parties acknowledge the middle school counselor,
Sorry.
no, you're good. Now it's copying twice.
And will work to reduce.
Oh, no, I'm unconnected. I just think in that this issue will need to be, the issue needs to be addressed or something like that.
Okay.
Can you read what you have when you get it done?
Acknowledge that further review of middle school counselor workload, something like that.
Further review of, is needed. Further review and work on this issue is needed.
The parties acknowledge that middle school counselors have a high caseload and that this issue will require further work, review, and work.
Yes.
Did you say work twice, work, review, and work?
I didn't know how to read, so that was, that was why I said work twice.
That is funny.
I'm
That
a
is so funny.
visual learner, so I just sometimes have to get verification of what you said.
The parties acknowledge that middle school counselors have a high caseload and that this issue will require further review and work.
Yeah.
Can we change work to problem solving? Just because, I don't know, it sounded better to me.
Yeah, I like that, especially since we're using the term work, problem solving hyphenated.
Further problem
Like
solving. Yeah. You guys are kind of changing your culture with the work that you do, and quite frankly, words do matter. I love it.
Okay. I like
So
this.
consensus, you guys doing thumbs in the room there? Someone looking around, you got consensus on this document? Awesome, awesome.
Are you guys okay if I put today's date at the top, May 20th?
Correct.
Okay.
2024 now, is that what it is?
Oh, God. I'm going to delete the notes at the top. We have them somewhere else, right, Lindsay?
Yeah, they're in just like our meeting notes.
Perfect.
And then Jill, if you want to, I don't know, Jen, if someone wants to screen share, or I could perhaps screen share, I'll pull the agenda back up, or whoever wants to amend it. I think your agenda for next meeting, you can just sort of mark off what you've got done, and then let's kind of look at how much time you have at next meeting, and is there any information you need to move forward for the next meeting? And your next meeting is an all day, I believe, next Tuesday, the 25th, am I right?
Yes.
8:30 to 3 o'clock, yes?
Yes,
Yes, that's correct.
graduation that night.
Okay, so definitely hard stop at 3 o'clock. Jill, can you screen share the agenda and see what you've got on it and what you guys want to, do you keep it in that order, and do you have everything you need to go in that order? And I want to look at it and see if we have enough time to maybe do your, breakouts into your 3 economic teams. I don't know, I just wanted to look.
I don't know that I have a formal agenda typed up, but
No, the one you shared today, we didn't get but through the first 2 points. So if you reshare that, I think you can edit it to make it your agenda for next Tuesday.
It's in the
So
chat.
next we have, compensation at some point we'll have to do. Grievance procedure, we had talked about doing NEA-5, which was on PD. We had asked about reviewing the survey data from
I have that.
Dr. Grumman. SMSD 3, staffing on high leave days. And then if you wanted just us to share that menu for SMSD 5 PLC, then otherwise, that's, the only other one was like,
Is that what Jill put in the chat?
Yeah. Do we want to drop the survey and the slides or whatever from your guys' meeting just in to the drive so that way we can look at it?
Say that again, I'm sorry. Our
'Cause you-
meeting?
Your meeting,
Got it.
you can drop a couple slides in there, that way we can look at it, and then if you drop the other stuff in there, we can look at it ahead of time, and I was-
Lindsay took notes. You mind just putting the notes?
do you want me
in
to put the notes and the menu
Yeah,
just in our drive?
I
Okay.
think so, yeah. Thank you.
So do we want to do, I think our question is, do we want to do compensation on Tuesday? Do we want to say, or do we want to save it for our June meetings? And if we do compensation, do we want to start out with it or save it for if we get these other issues done? I don't really have a preference. It's just a really hard discussion.
I'm hesitant to keep putting off grievance procedure because it would go into your
Yeah.
it would go into your third IBB cycle next year if you don't do it this year. And while I understand it may not be a priority and that's why it keeps getting bumped, at least maybe make a conscious decision that if it's the last thing to do, you may not get to it. Or take it up sooner than later. That's my recommendation. And so.
I kind of liked doing, like, when last year we did compensation, our small groups met, like, at the end of the day. Just because everybody took the amount of time they needed to take, then we were able to kind of sit on it. And then, I know Rachel and John and I kind of communicated back and forth any other thing we thought of before we presented the next time.
Yeah. I like the idea of doing grievance, reviewing the survey data and professional development. I don't think high leave days should take, too long, but if we don't, I think no matter what, we want to leave enough time to break into teams. And I have a 3:30 hair appointment that I have to make, but other than that.
I get you. Guys, is the 7th and 8th your 2 days? I don't have
Yeah.
my calendar. 7th and 8th are your last 2 days, and those are what, 6-hour meeting days?
is it
We have a lot of time.
7th and 8th or 7th and 9th?
Oh, they're one day apart. You're right, 7th and 9th.
Okay, good, that's what I have. Just wanna make sure.
So I'm glad Lindsay raised the idea of the breaking out into groups on economics. And then also, did you all do any group meeting as homework? In other words, because if we don't do economics till the 7th, you all can spend some time late in the day on the 7th in your small groups, working on what you do with economics, and then you'd share them on the 9th. It would give you some time on the 8th if you wanted to continue meet offline with your small group on the 8th.
I think, Lindsay, were you talking about getting into small groups on economics on Tuesday, the 25th of May?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if we have.
That may
a
make
full
sense,
day,
too.
because
Yeah, we have a full day.
Grievance.
Yeah, that may make sense too.
Will take however long. PD reviewing the survey data, especially like Jay said, if we're able to just put it in the drive, everybody can review it, and then
Okay.
we can have a discussion.
Yeah.
High leave, I don't think is gonna take very long. PLC, if we put that information in the drive, everybody can review it, and then it's just let's talk about it. It won't take very long. And then you have compensation.
What number is the PLC?
PLC is SMSD 5.
And then Lindsay, does NEA 2 come off this list?
I mean, with us finalizing the collective commitment, I think it would. The only other remaining issues was NEA 7, which was just talking about the ESSER funds, and NEA 6, individualized learning, but it was talking about class size. So I don't know where we are with those.
Can you tell me the PLC one?
SMSD 5.
So we need to have time set it to do some bullets for budget planning too, built into before we break up,
Yeah. Like maybe that morning too, we can just say, let's stop at this time so we have time to meet in budget teams. And then wherever we are is where we are.
Stephanie, do you have our teams yet? I'm really curious.
Oh my gosh, you think I'm that on it? Are you crazy? No, I don't have
Do I have to answer that question?
I should just like put a hat with all the the teachers in it, a hat with everybody else in it, and then I grab one out of each, that's how I should do it. I don't put that much thought into it. Actually, I lie. Sometimes I do, but with y'all, I'm not.
Give high schoolers power tools. There's always a level of craziness involved there.
I have a question. There's 10 of us on the team, so is it going to be 5 groups of 2, 2 groups of 3 and a group of 4, 2 groups of 3 and 2 groups of 2?
Stop your math brain. It's too late.
It's your math brain, right? I'm not even there.
It's never too late.
It's too late for this elementary brain to do.
Okay, sorry.
I have to tell you guys, I'm not putting that much thought because you guys just are. But what I will do is make sure that no one that is new this year will be, like, I can't put all that, I'm gonna call you guys newbies, but, Abby, Abby, Joe, Scott, I won't make them a team of their own.
Well, yeah, that wouldn't work anyways because they're all on the same team.
Right, they wouldn't have a teacher. Okay, yeah, I have to tell you a mediator secret on IBB. You all won't have this problem because I think you all have great rapport, and I'm just telling you what I've done before. Sometimes if I have like the union, because IBB is not always with associations or with teachers, like the management person and the union person that are most disagreeable with each other, they go on a team together always. And that makes them work their stuff out in the team versus bringing it to the whole team. And it really works, actually. And they sometimes come back as best buddies and with consensus on what they've done in their team. So it's pretty cool. Okay, so it is 4:56, and I'm going to see you guys for a full day next Tuesday. And Lindsay's got the agenda done. If you think of anything, information you need as you head into economics, let each other know. And then if you want subject matter experts on standby or people to just help you with your team's calculations, give them heads up that you may be working on, in teams on numbers, if you will, on Tuesday afternoon and Thursday day, just so maybe they can be on call. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys, it's raining here. I don't know about there.
Thank you, Stephanie.
It's a final step.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Have a good night.
Right.